Welcome back. In this section, we'll be looking at risk assessment. Also, we'll be looking at residual risk and substitute risk. Identifying hazards begins with pre-flight planning, crew member briefings, and pre-flight inspections. Risk and hazard assessment begins with analyzing the likelihood and severity of the hazard. This helps us establish the probability of risk. Then we mitigate or eliminate the risks once they're identified. We plan, evaluate the plan, and execute the plan. Next, we verify that the plan executed as it should have, and if it didn't, we document that and add that to our next round of planning. Here are a few obvious steps to mitigate identified risks. This is not a complete list, and you may identify your own. It may be possible to mitigate identified risks using a visual observer by completing a thorough pre-flight inspection. Always plan for the weather. Also, be familiar with the airspace. An example of this is next to a hospital that has helicopter emergency services. Do not get in the way. Make sure that your UA is properly loaded and secured. And the last one is performance planning, making sure that your UA and the intended operation can handle what's expected of it. Take a look at this risk assessment chart. It's pretty straightforward. At the top we have severity with 5 columns, from negligible to catastrophic. On the left, we have the likelihood that the identified risk would happen, from extremely improbable down to frequent. Pairing severity with likelihood gives us our risk assessment. Let's apply a risk assessment to weather. Let's take, for example, flight operations at a location known for high winds during summer months, and you're using a wind compensating UA, one that can handle maybe 20 knots. From 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., there is occasional low breeze at 5 knots. All right, we apply what we know, we take a look at the chart, and we might give this a risk rating of A4. From 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., there may be occasional moderate breeze with gusts at 15 knots. Again, we apply what we know, and we might come up with a risk rating of B4. All right, our last example. From 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., there may be a remote chance of a strong breeze at 23 knots. We take what we know, apply it to the chart, and we may have a risk rating of D3. When we look at all 3 of these examples, which one are you going to choose? You've performed a risk assessment. You have made a mitigation plan. Now it's time to take a look at that plan. Let's assess it. Does the mitigation plan eliminate all risk, or is there any residual risk? That is, risk that's remaining after the mitigation. Also, there may be substitute risk. This could be intentional or unintentional. In this case, did the mitigation steps introduce new hazards? Are you swapping out one hazard for another hazard? The term substitute risk will come up with the care and team checklists. All right, so let's review. We identify the hazards. We evaluate the likelihood and severity. We develop mitigation plans of the hazards that we've identified and the likelihood and severity of that particular hazard. That's the risk assessment. Then, and this is really important, we verify that mitigations do not create new hazards. From this, it's rinse and repeat.